So good afternoon. My name is Gabriel. I'm literally 100 yards or less from Ginat, across the street. So we're neighbors. And I prepared a short presentation for you. And curiously, I think it's connected to what Noria was talking about. So probably no coincidences there. But perhaps it's a little bit of a different model to some of those, some aspects of the things Noria was talking about. So if you allow me, it's in the form of a little bit of a story, and I will share screen and tell you a story. So just tell me if you hear me and if you see the screen. Okay. So I will be speaking from the point of view of something called the Urantia book, and I will explain a little bit what it is, but I will leave you to ask questions or explore for yourself the nature of this book. And from this book, I will present a model of a human being. How is a human being composed? Or, how can we describe a human being? And how is this model relating to some existential questions that I was asking myself even before I found the Urantia book, or the Urantia book found me? I'll just say that I spent many years translating this book from English to Hebrew, and it really changed my life on many aspects, many levels. So it's quite a meaningful station in my life, this book and everything that followed from there. I don't know if you know ChatGPT, if you heard the AI ChatGPT. So I decided to just play around a little bit with it in preparation for this presentation. So I asked it, can you summarize the nature of mind, personality, body, soul, and spirit according to the Urantia book? And if you take your phone and scan that QR code, you can read what ChatGPT was telling me. So if you want to do this now, you can do it now. I can share that code later for you. So it will go into a conversation that I just had today with ChatGPT. And the joke is that, one day something like ChatGPT can actually give this presentation instead of a human, maybe not tell the story from my perspective. Can you still hear me? Okay. But certainly describe things quite ingeniously, and it's quite a tool, but this is a digression. This is not about ChatGPT. So what is it about? What is the Urantia book? I told you it did change my life, and it talks about a lot of things, and to me, it answered a lot of questions. And in specific, it gave some answers to the questions that were bothering me as a human. Where am I coming from? Who am I? Where am I going next? And what on earth do I have to do when I'm on this planet? What's the purpose of this life? What's the meaning of life? What's the purpose of human existence? Curiously, part 4 of this book is about 500,000 words about Jesus. So if you're interested in knowing who Jesus was, and what exactly he came to do here on earth, that's basically what I spend most of my waking hours doing, is working on big projects that expound those topics. So what you see behind me in the background are some big projects that I'm working on with people around the world. They have to do with Jesus, but this is not what we discuss here today. I am mentioning the Urantia book because everything I'm going to tell you is based on this source. Even though I studied many other things before and after, I still feel this is the most advanced presentation that I found on this planet to the questions that I was interested in. I was looking for funny existential questions, and I came through this one. And we call puppies, who's a good old boy? Who's a good old boy? And wondering, perhaps, they will never find out if that is an existential question for a dog. But the ones that I was interested in where this one, who am I? And also this one, where am I coming from? Or where did I come from? And where is it that I'm going? And what happens after I die? And I think the most important one is, what on earth should I be doing here? What's the meaning of this life? So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to give you a model of what the Urantia book says that we are as humans on this planet. How are we composed, and how are those things related to these questions? But this is really a very high level overview. So the Urantia book talks about 5 components. And they're not necessarily bodies like in yoga or other traditions or chakras. You can think of it as a system with 5 components. But again, I'm not an expert in this, so I'm really trying to simplify something. So there's a lot of depth in here that I'm not going to go into. So just excuse me that I'm keeping it quite simplistic and simple. So a human is a physical body, something we call mind, which again is a big story in and of itself. Something we call soul, which is another big story in and of itself, and something we call spirit. And many traditions say that we are just this, but the Urantia book adds one more component, which is basically like the secret sauce. And they call this personality. And but here personality is not something that is resulting from everything else, or something that is based on our conditioning or something else. Personality is basically, and this is my own interpretation from the Urantia teachings, is personality is the essence of oneness, of Gabriel. So there is no other personality in this cosmos like me. Each one of those personalities is uniquely endowed by the creator of all things. We can call them God or Universal Father or the Source or whatever it is that we don't call it. Each person here on this Zoom room and each person in the entire cosmos, not just on this planet, is uniquely endowed with personality, and there will be no other like this person. So it's not like we're better or worse than others. We're just unique. And even if this personality, I'm going to put the carriage ahead of the horses, but we can discuss this later. Even if this personality does not survive in eternity, there will be no other one like it. So it's really unique. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to tell you a little bit about each one of those components. So the physical body is something that we all can see, feel. We know we have physical bodies. We are aware of this part of ourselves. There's not much more I can say about this. The Urantia book doesn't talk much about this because it spends its time talking about things that we know less about. So, for example, the mind, according to the Urantia book, and again, this is really a very simplistic presentation, so please forgive me for this. But the way I interpret it is there are cosmic circuits of mind, and we have a brain which is like a radio transistor. The brain can tap into and connect to these cosmic circuits, and they have frequencies and they have qualities, and we are, as humans, connected to a very particular set of frequencies with this brain of ours. Consequently, if the brain is not functioning properly, as if, for example, if a person is mentally ill, severely mentally ill, that means their brain is usually chemically imbalanced and not functioning properly. That means the transistor cannot really function properly. So that person is detrimented, but not by not having a strong and clear connection to the mind circuits of this cosmos. So that's one way of looking at mental illness. And of course, that's something that we can treat and deal with. But there's a clear effect. That person is not fully capable of the things that a person not mentally ill is not dealing with. And the other side of this equation, and this is my own interpretation, is I look at the mind as an operating system. And the reason, and you have Mac, you have Windows, you have Android, you have all those. The reason I'm saying this is because we have been giving this connection and this flavor of mind to do something. And in this sense, I a little bit disagree with Norio at the end of his presentation, that he said that, well, at least that's how I understood that, a lot of the things that happen to us are because we think. Yes, I agree, but in the other flip side of that is at least according to the Urantia book, mind is the arena where we actually evolve and develop. And I will explain in a minute what is it that we evolve and develop. So it's very important that we think, and it's very important that we think properly, and our thoughts basically create our own reality and everything. So it's very nuanced, and we can discuss this after the presentation and interact this with what Nori was talking before. I want to talk a little bit about spirit, which this is beginning to be revelatory material from the Urantia book. Spirit is another endowment. We are not spiritual beings yet. We have a spiritual component. The Urantia book calls them thought adjusters. Now, this is a little part of God, or the source, or whatever you want to call it, or it, or her, or him. The Urantia book calls it the universal father sometimes. So this is actually written by ChatGPT in response to my question. So we all have a fragment of God inside of us, and that fragment of God is our navigator to our being captain. So if we choose to heed its guidance, it will take us back home. And home is basically the destiny of everything. And I can explain what I mean by that. But we've been giving navigational capability even while we are here on Earth. And we've been giving a present, a part of God that is inside of us. And this is the model that the Urantia book talks about. So remember, I was talking about personality, about a physical body, about a radio brain transistor that connects to cosmic mental circuits and allows us to do all the mental things that we can do, think and plan and emote and react and all those things. But what is really the soul then? And the Urantia book says that the soul is basically what we're creating on this planet. It's a creation. It's an evolutionary creation that is the result, is the sum total result of everything we're creating in our life. Sometimes the model that the Urantia book uses is that the spirit is one parent and the mind, i.e. us as humans, is the other parent, and the soul is the child, is what is created. And by this, I already gave you 5 components: personality, which is the secret source, the physical body we know, mental, spirit, and soul. And now I'm going to try to attempt to give you my own interpretations to those big questions that I was asking existentially, and the Urantia book gave me some answers. The first one is, who am I? And that's the hardest one to answer. And I still don't have a very good answer. I was trying to say, what can I tell you? Who am I? Am I the mind? Am I the soul? Am I the spirit? Am I the personality? Am I all of those? Am I something else? And the truth is, I still don't know. I'm still exploring this. So I found this graphic that says I'm still working on this. And I'm basically reinventing myself all the time, which is what we're doing anyway. So I don't have a very satisfactory answer to who am I, not yet. I can give you some answers about the soul, for example. And the Urantia book is quite clear about this, in contrast with many other spiritual traditions, in saying that almost every person, and by almost I mean 99.999% of the people living today and that have lived on this planet, this is their first life. and they did not exist before as such, and they will not exist again on this planet as humans. It's a one-off. They will exist again somewhere else as something else, but not as humans. So basically, the Urantia book says there is no reincarnation of souls, but there are souls. So the soul is something that is created and is actually potentially surviving and immortal, whereas other parts of our five model components are not surviving. So the radio transistor has no function in other levels where we're going next. So we don't need that. And of course, we don't need the physical body. We all know that it remains here on Earth and decomposes and ashes to ashes. The spirit does survive, but it's not something, it's like it's like something we've been given. And then in later phases of our existence, something else will happen. And that's a whole topic. If you ask me, I will answer in the questions and answers. So what is it that we're here to do? And the short answer is, this is a school, and we are evolving a soul that is potentially immortal. And I'm saying potentially because some souls would not survive. This alludes to what in other traditions is called the Judgment Day or the End of Days or whatever you want to call it. But in simple terms, it means if this soul that is being created is not cosmically viable, and the simplest way I can say this is this cosmos is true, it's beautiful, and it's good. And if that soul does not have enough of those qualities, then it's not basically real. It's like saying, cold exists. Well, physics tells us that coldness is basically the absence of heat, the absence of movement, and light exists, but darkness is the absence of light. So in that sense, if you make it really, really simple, some souls will be judged to be viable because they're good. And even if there's a little piece there that is good, there's so much mercy in this universe that this being, this soul, will be allowed to continue to evolve to its fullest potential. So the short answer is, what is it that we're here to do? We're here to evolve. Life is certainly not easy, not simple, but everything is a school. And everything we learn is asking us to take decisions and make choices. And this is what we have to do. And remember, we have a navigator, a pilot, a compass that was given to us that always points to true north, always tells us what is the divine thing. But we always have a choice. We can choose to go that direction, or we can choose to go somewhere else. You know, the Hebrew word, this is not a theology thing, and I'm not into any of that, but I do want to mention one thing to you. Not that I believe in that, but the word sin, originally in Hebrew, and actually it's also the same in Latin and Greek. The word sin literally means to miss the mark. So it's not necessarily negative. It just says you're in the wrong path. You're not really aligned with whatever should be, whatever is divine. But we have a choice. So we can choose to be on the right path or on the wrong path. And either way is a lesson. So there's, that's what it is. And what happens later after we graduate is basically the reality is that we're cosmic babies. Most of us were just born on this planet. We will never come back to this planet as humans. We may come back many, many, many generations later in different forms just to visit. But we will move on to different areas and different levels of this universe. And there's a definite plan for us to evolve and eventually find the source of all things. That's what I call home. So basically, we're all going home. But this is basically step one. And I'm sure that you have many more questions like I do. I don't have answers to everything, but I can and do recommend this source. It's very, 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 very long and complex. But you can, pick and choose and read some things there that will probably help you. And like I said, I did translate this to Hebrew. So if you read Hebrew and you're more comfortable in Hebrew, I can give you a link to where you can find this. And if you want to ask me more about any of this, then now is the time, because I'm done talking for now.
Gabriel, why does this resonate with you particularly? I mean, I'm sure you've studied alternate teachings and explanations. What was it about this that connected or pulled you?
Can you just be more specific about what you mean by this? Which this is this?
Urantia, what you've explained.
Well, I've explained a lot of things. So, well, I can just say that I wasn't looking for anything. I was just looking to get away from my misery. About, I don't know, 15 years ago, I had an existential crisis. And I started asking those questions, what, WTF? And you can exchange that to any other blunt words. And I was completely miserable. And then my search began, and I studied with many teachers and many traditions, and I was looking for, a way out of my misery. But that slowly transformed into something else. And then the concept of, what really those questions mean to me is, I'm curious about, why am I here, and why is everything the way it is? That's, I think, part of my composition. And this book has so many answers. A lot of people question the source, and there's a lot of questions about the origin of this material. And I understand all that, and I respect all that, and I have some answers about that. But when I started reading this book, I guess I was ready. And as soon as I spent the first 30 seconds, something in me said, there's no way I can explain this or convince any other person or even myself that I understand all of this, but it's true. I know this is true. I felt it. I feel it now. This is true. Whether I understand it or not, I don't know. And I still don't understand a lot of things that this book explains. So that was my premise. And then the rest of my interaction with this book is based on that belief that this is true. So everything I'm doing today is based on the things that happened to me from that one decision that I made many, many years ago, that for me, this is true. So, okay, what's the next step? So one of the things that is, I have to translate this. Why? Because if somebody is interested in this and doesn't know English, then I'm doing this for them so that they can read it in Hebrew. Because, if they're interested in this material, it's best to read it in your mother tongue. So I spent many years doing that for that reason. And then other things happened, and the point where basically my entire life is professionally now, and not spiritually, but professionally, is revolving around things that happen from my interactions with this material. And I'm working with people around the world that feel the same way about this material. So we do stuff to serve in our own very particular way, based on material from this book. So, yeah.
And is there a group or society of like-minded? Is there a ritual? Is meetings?
Yeah, there's well, I'll say a little bit about what it isn't before I say what it is. It's not a church. It's not a religion. It's not a hierarchical social organization that has somebody in charge. There are several social organizations that are voluntary. People, some of them want to belong and some of them don't, and it's okay. There's probably a few thousand people actively studying this and talking to each other, and probably a few tens of thousands others that are not interacting with others.
In the world.
Conferences, yeah, in the world. So this is very, very small. The book was translated to probably 20-25 languages over the last 65 years since it was published in 1955. And people still translate it. There's study groups online and in person, there's conferences. And there's a lot of interaction between people who were touched and their lives were transformed by this. So obviously they want to associate and get to know each other and do things together. But this is not organized as a religion or as a church. So it's just individuals studying together and serving together. And so we form organizations to do this. Yeah, this is what exists out there. So
I'd like to say something. This is Irene. I've studied the Urantia book. I was fortunate enough to have it as audio because as I was reading it, my mind just went too many directions. So listening to it as audio was very helpful for me. And I think you need to explain a little bit more about what it is so that they get an idea.
Okay, I can bring back that slide of, I guess, this one. And so the Urantia book is about 1,200,000 words. So it's very, very, very long. It's probably one of the longest books on this planet, if not the longest one. It's got 4 parts. And it basically goes from the center towards the outwardly. So it talks about the central and super universes. So that's the cosmology part. If you ask the question, what is out there? Where are we and what is out there? Then you would start with the center of all things, what I like to call home. In the terminology of the Urantia book, this is called the Isle of Paradise. And it's, there's a whole story about what it is and why it's there. And so there's a lot of complicated concepts that explain that, the center of all things. And then you're going outward towards where we are in the universe of universes. And the cosmology talks about a central universe, then super universes, and then local universes, which have a correspondence to what we know astronomically. I will digress here right now. I haven't read this, but I haven't read this exact piece. I just saw the title that one of my friends shared on a WhatsApp group. But you know that the James Webb telescope is out there, and it's about 1 million miles away from Earth. So it can see things that we couldn't see before. And I think it would not be an understatement to say that there's a lot of astronomers and astrophysicists right now spending a lot of sleepless nights because their theories are crumbling. And whatever we came up as explanations as to, the Big Bang and all those things, and I'm a very, very small expert in all of this. So if you ask me questions about it, I don't know how to answer. But I know they're in trouble. And what they're seeing now is things that are starting to corroborate the cosmology of the Urantia book. So for example, I saw a post about the fact that there are very, very old, huge galaxies that we haven't known before, and there are 6 of them. And of course, there are 7 super universes. So that would maybe correspond to the fact that for the first time, we can see the other 6 super universes from within the one that we are part of, which is the number 7. So that's just a digression. So the Urantia book explains the cosmology. So part 2 would be the story of our part of the galaxy, which is called the local universe. Don't ask me to say astronomically if it's the Milky Way or not. I don't know. But you know, the terms that we speak about, nebulae and galaxies, they correspond loosely to the stories. One person told me that the Urantia book, the publication of the Urantia book was delayed until the first telescope, the first strong telescope that was set up in Los Angeles, could actually witness the first galaxy. And that was around the early 50s. I don't know if this is true, but this is just an interesting anecdote. So that is part 2. And then part 3, Urantia basically is a word that describes our planet. So if I say I'm from Urantia, I basically say I'm from Earth. So Urantia is another word for Earth. So the Urantia book is the Earth book, basically. So like you see here, part 3 says Urantia is the name of our planet. And it just tells the story of, how the solar system was created, how the bigger astronomical things that we are part of were created. And then the evolution of our planet, how life was implanted on this planet, how it evolved, the geological, geographical, flora and fauna over the last, 4 billion years are explained there in quite a lot of detail. This is the part of the book that I'm the least interested in. So I read it, but not that many times. But it's got a lot of details, also about physics and many things that we still don't know. So it's really revelatory material. And in all of this, they allude to the fact that the person we know as Jesus of Nazareth, that incarnated on this planet 2,000 years ago, he did have a life before he came here. And, if you want a spoiler alert, then he is the being who created this local universe, which is only one of many, many, many. And the reason he came to be, there are many reasons why he came as a human on this planet, but one of them is to experience from within what it is to be a human, so that he can basically do his job better. It was part of his job requirement to experience the life of the creatures that he created. So we are all of us are children of the being who was incarnated here as Jesus of Nazareth. And that's why they dedicate part 4 of this book to explaining, why he came here and what is it that he came here to teach, because he was teaching something that is important for all of us to understand. And when people actually, let's say, apply those teachings, our civilization is not going to look the same. So it's almost like a roadmap for the future. So it's part 4 is setting the record straight as to who is Jesus, why he was here, and there's an account of everything important, or at least everything with the beings that gave us this book think is important for us to know. That part 4 is about 500,000 words. So there's a lot of information there with dates and names and places and motivations and incentives and drama. And well, it's a big, big, big story. So the projects that I'm working on are taking this material and making it accessible in different ways to people around the world, and especially to people who are not interested in Christianity. And what we're doing is we're saying, Jesus existed. He was born into a Jewish family, so he was not Christian, and Christianity did not exist when Jesus was on earth. So if you're interested in exploring what one of the most advanced teachers, spiritual teachers that lived on this planet said and did, then here's a resource that explains all of that, and we're going to help you navigate this material. So, we're not engaged in anything Christian. That's our own particular angle. So we're doing software app, and we're doing films, and we're going to build a museum for Jesus in Israel. So that's what I'm engaged in my professional life.
So you'll present Jesus as, hold on, one second. Gabriel, you'll present Jesus as a non-Christian, and that'll be the presentation.
Well, what we're going to say is, when we're talking to people, especially young people around the world, you can see in the data, in the statistics, that institutional religions, all of them, are losing grasp. And most people are saying, I'm not this, and I'm not this, and I'm not this. I'm not Hindu, I'm not Buddhist, I'm not Christian, I'm not Muslim, I'm not Baha'i, I'm nothing. But they're still looking for stuff. We all know that, just like I was looking for meaning and purpose and asking those big questions. So most people at one point or another in life will start asking something. And if you're interested in truth, then we're going to present to you what this person had to say about different things, but not from the vantage point of a religion or even the Christian religion, but from the vantage point of the stories that are presented in this source material, the Urantia book, which precede Christianity. So no, we're not going to talk about theology or eschatological stuff, or the things that Christians discuss. We're going to try to help people that are looking for spiritual meaning, truth, hope, outside the context of any institutional religion, but focus on the life and teachings of this one person. The reason I think it's important is because if you accept the premise, like I do, that this being is basically our father brother, is the creator of everything that exists in this local universe, which is a section of the galaxy, of the Milky Way, even though we cannot know that we have lots and lots and lots of brothers and sisters, and we are part of a cosmic family. And we haven't yet realized, all of us, although again, I will digress, there's a lot of evidence about visitations and extraterrestrials and contacts, and people dismiss that as UFO material and conspiracy theories. But I've spoken to many people who had experiences, and there's a lot of information out there. I'm not engaged in any of this. I'm just saying that there is a distinct possibility that a lot of people on Earth already have been contacted, and that's their experience. And I don't believe that we're alone in the universe, even if I cannot prove it. So that's why I'm working with this material, because it just, like I said in the beginning, when I started reading it, I just knew it's true. And so I asked, what do I have to do with this? And then the answers to that question are coming all the time. So I do what I have to do with this, and that's what I do. So.
So you don't sound to me like you're proselytizing or evangelicalizing, or it sounds like you're just putting the information out there, making it available, and living by it.
That's exactly what we're doing. We don't want to convert anybody. The young people of today, let's say the Zoomers, Generation Z, there's already quite definite attributes, in general, to that generation. You can generalize things about generations, which are big groups of people born roughly, within 20 years of time. Of course, individually, each one of them is individual, but there's already generalities. And I can tell you that they don't read. And most of the time, they're using a computer or another their phone or something else. Long format things don't work. The Urantia book is 1 million and more words. Many of them will never read it. So I'd like to make it accessible to them, at least the salient parts that I think are going to help somebody who's looking for truth on this planet. So our target audience is truth seekers, especially young people. And we're going to try to make them feel comfortable engaging with us and sharing this, consuming the information that we will provide to them, and respect whatever they're saying. So we've done a lot of research to understand what are the young people of today, how are they relating to spirituality and truth and God and religion. And we're trying to be part of the solution to whatever they're asking for. And they're asking to be accepted. They're asking not to give them bullshit. A lot of what institutional religions, and pardon my bluntness, but there's a lot of stories there that don't make sense to people. They never did, but we were asked to believe just because somebody with authority says, you cannot question this. It's a mystery. Okay, but I still don't feel comfortable about this. And younger people are more critical, and so we're going to try to present a coherent picture about things that they might be interested in the hopes that it will help them in their journey. Like I said, what we're here to do is choose and evolve, and we each have different needs. When somebody is interested in those big questions of, what am I supposed to do with my life, and why isn't this world working? Because it's not, it's broken. We can see that. So this is a sign of times of a lot of things not working, and that causes a lot of strife and struggle in people. So there are answers everywhere in many traditions. So we're just part of the menu, but there's no need to proselytize or try to convince somebody. When you're evolving on this planet, each one of us has an individual path, and there's many spiritual traditions that have a lot of truth in them. So if somebody chose something else as their main tradition, that's great, and we're going to try to complement that in any way that we can without telling them that it's wrong. One of the things that Jesus did when he was teaching is he tried to ask a lot of questions to the people that he was talking to, and he tried to take whatever he knew what was right and what was wrong, because he was just more evolved. But instead of telling them, you're wrong with this, he would just take what they understood correctly based on his own judgment and try to make it bigger and bigger and bigger. So enlarge the concepts of truth that they had in the hopes that they will crowd out the errors. But without telling the person that they were erroneous. It's like, okay, let's talk more about this part of what you said, and let me add some more information to you about this. This is my own simplistic interpretation, but that's one of the methods that we're going to use. Is here's some more information about this aspect, and hopefully it will help you. So yeah, we're not proselytizing. I don't think that's what our target audience would appreciate. So I wouldn't appreciate that. So
All right. Anyone else? Questions? Certainly gives me a lot to think about. Well then, Gabriel, muchas gracias, te daba, thank you very much.
thank you everybody.